James was the picture of success. He had a thriving career, a beautiful home, and a loving wife, Sarah. They had been married for 10 years and had built a life together that many would envy. But James wasn't satisfied. His ambitions led him to take more business trips, attend more social events, and seek out more excitement. Sarah noticed the changes. The late nights, the distant conversations, the way James seemed more invested in his phone than in her. She tried to reach out, to reconnect, but James was always too busy, too distracted. And then, one day, she found the messages. James had been having an affair with a younger woman named Vanessa, someone he met during one of his business trips. What started as casual flirting quickly turned into something more. Vanessa was exciting, new, and made James feel alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. He convinced himself that he deserved this, that Sarah would never find out, and even if she did, she wouldn't leave him. But Sarah was no fool. She confronted James one evening after dinner, holding his phone with the incriminating messages displayed on the screen. James's heart dropped, and for the first time in a long while, he felt fear. "How could you?" Sarah's voice trembled, hurt and anger mixing together. "After everything we've been through, after everything we've built, how could you do this to us?" James had no words. He tried to apologize, to explain, but nothing he said could erase the betrayal Sarah felt. She left that night, packing a suitcase and driving away, leaving James alone in the house that was once filled with love and laughter. The divorce was swift. Sarah didn't want to drag things out. She wanted to move on with her life, away from the pain and heartbreak. James tried to stop it, tried to convince her to give him another chance, but Sarah was resolute. The papers were signed, the assets divided, and just like that, the life they had built together was over. James watched Sarah leave the courtroom, her head held high, and realized that he had lost the most important person in his life. Vanessa, the woman he had risked everything for, quickly faded from his life. What was once thrilling became meaningless, and James found himself alone, grappling with the consequences of his actions. Months passed, and the emptiness in James's life grew. He threw himself into his work, but success felt hollow without Sarah by his side. The house felt like a tomb, filled with memories of a life he had destroyed. James started to see a therapist, trying to understand why he had sabotaged his marriage, why he had taken Sarah for granted. Through therapy, James began to confront his own insecurities, his fears of aging, of losing his sense of self. He realized that the affair had been a desperate attempt to cling to his youth, to escape the responsibilities that came with marriage, but in doing so, he had lost the one person who had truly loved him. James reached out to Sarah, sending her letters and messages, trying to convey how sorry he was, how much he regretted his actions. But Sarah remained distant. She had moved on, started a new chapter in her life, and wasn't interested in reopening old wounds. One day, after months of no contact, Sarah agreed to meet James for coffee. They sat across from each other in a small cafe, the silence between them heavy with unspoken words. James looked at Sarah, really looked at her, and saw the strength and resilience in her eyes. "I know I hurt you," James said, his voice breaking. "And I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for another chance. I've changed, Sarah. I realize now what I threw away, and I want to make it right." Sarah studied him, seeing the pain in his eyes, the sincerity in his words. She had loved James once, deeply, and a part of her still did. But she was no longer the same person she was when they were married. She had grown, become stronger, more independent. "I don't know, James," Sarah said, her voice soft. "A lot has happened. I've changed, you've changed. I don't know if we can go back to what we were." James nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I don't want to go back," he said. "I want to move forward, together. I want to rebuild what we lost, to start over." They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in their thoughts. Finally, Sarah spoke. "We can't erase the past, James. But maybe we can learn from it. Maybe we can try to build something new." Sarah and James decided to take things slow, to rebuild their relationship one step at a time. It wasn't easy. The wounds were deep, and trust had to be earned. But as they spent time together, they began to rediscover the love that had brought them together in the first place. They attended couples therapy, learned how to communicate better, and slowly, the walls between them began to come down. James was patient, understanding that he had to prove himself to Sarah, that he had to show her through his actions that he was committed to making things right. Months turned into a year, and their relationship grew stronger. It wasn't the same as before, but it was something new, something forged in the fires of pain and redemption. James learned to appreciate the small moments, the quiet dinners, the long walks, the simple act of holding Sarah's hand. In the end, they found their way back to each other, not as the people they were before, but as two individuals who had learned from their mistakes and were ready to build a future together. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real, and it was theirs. And that was enough.